It's a new moon in Virgo happening on Saturday, August 23rd, 2025. And you guys, the astrology is just off the hook right now. I know you've probably heard me say this before, but just wow. Just it's amazing. The things that we need to be happening in the sky to reflect a change in direction are happening. So the symbolism is there. Please don't fall into despair. It's going to be okay. And I'll be explaining how and why as we go through. So stay tuned, like and subscribe, all that stuff. Yeah. So usually at each lunation, there's themes, sure, and there's, sometimes some interaction with one of the outer planets or two. But you know, it's sudden. It's sometimes it feels like something monumental is happening, but these days it's like every lunation there's some big honking thing happening, and that's happening again here at the new moon. It's getting redonkulous. Like, okay, universe, seriously, yeah. So just to set the table here, it's very, very, very unusual to have a collection of planets at 0 to 2 degrees of the signs that they're in, all at the same time. 0 degrees of a sign is very powerful, zealous, sometimes naive, but still powerful energy. And we've got all of the planets from Saturn on out to Pluto hanging out in these early degrees of the signs that they're in. And the new moon is happening at 0 degrees of Virgo. So there's like it's so perfectly set up. It's just amazing. And to further set the table, the planets that are further out than from Saturn on out, they all move really slowly by comparison to the planets that are from Saturn on in towards the sun. We can think of the movement of the outer planets as symbolizing monumental, slow, gradual change. And because they move so slowly, we can kind of lose track of what the outer planets are doing in our day-to-day lives, while the inner planets are zipping by and are more obviously interacting with us, or it's more obvious to see what the symbolism is in our day-to-day moods, our ideas, the luck that happens to us, and how we sort it all out, what we think of what's happening. We might be able to guess what sign the moon is in by the way we feel inside. I know I cry at the drop of a hat on a good day, but man, when the moon's in Pisces or in Cancer, it's even better. Anyway, the moon is going to move in and out of a sign in a day or three, depending on the sign. So it's really easy to see that change as it happens. When we go from Pisces to Aries, it feels really different. But on the other hand, these outer planets take years to move through a sign. Pluto, for example, is going to stay in Aquarius for the next 20 years. And Neptune stays in a sign for 13 to 14 years, Uranus 7 to 8 years, and Saturn, even Saturn is 2.5 years in a sign. And this fall, every single one of those planets, except for Pluto, is going to retrograde back into the sign that they just left before they got to this 0 to 2 degree mark. So what do? We apply that redo the RE prefix to whatever the function of the planet is, if you follow me. So like with Mercury retrograde, we might have to go back and rewrite something or go back and rethink something through when it's retrograde. But especially when a planet is backing into the sign it just left, it generally symbolizes that there is some unfinished business we need to take care of. And I've been thinking that this might mean things are going to get worse in the USA and in Ukraine and in Palestine, although I'm not sure how they could get any worse in Palestine, but I digress. And I'm really quick to jump to the political ramifications, especially these days as we watch all of our progress burn before our eyes. But we have to remember that this is also, like, that's all mirroring what's happening in our lives too. The planet has left home and it has to go back and take care of unfinished business like cleaning and shutting off the utilities, going to closing or whatever. But in this case, I'm hopeful that it's going to be more like our heroes have left town to start a new life and put all the bad things behind them, but the bad guys won't let it rest, so they've got to go back and settle the score now. I'm hopeful that that's how this is going to go, and it really looks like, from all the indications I'm seeing, that's what's going to happen. Pluto is retrograde right now, but he's going to stay in Aquarius, and that's really good. Pluto left Capricorn on November 19th, 2024, just after the election. And he's never going back to Capricorn in our lifetimes. So that chapter is over with. And you know, Pluto in Capricorn could have been a transformational societal change in the structure of how our society operates, like in a good way. And maybe it did in Scandinavia or the bottom of the ocean, but apparently we weren't ready for that here in the United States and elsewhere. So instead, it put the emphasis on shadow Capricorn, like hoarding money, cold, callous control, and power for the sake of ego. Does that sound familiar to you? This is where the authoritarianism and the rise of the oligarchy that we're dealing with right now got its steam from, was from Pluto and Capricorn. So that's why it's a really big honking deal that Pluto is going to stay in Aquarius while all the other outer planets move back into the sign they were just in. And I'll talk more about specific dates as we get closer to them, but generally this fall, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are all going to back into Pisces and Taurus until they emerge in early 2026 and into the spring. So Saturn, who rules Capricorn and is the co-ruler of Aquarius, Saturn's going to be the first one to move back into Pisces. And that's right around the corner. That's September 1st that's happening. And they're going to return to Aries on February 13th of 2026. So I'm expecting things to start, the tide to start turning. Because I think of Saturn in Capricorn versus Saturn of Aquarius as kind of like good cop, bad cop. But that's really, really complex to kind of sort out. It's on my list for a separate video for another day. But anyway, Saturn has been ruling whatever Pluto has been doing since 2008 and is going to be into the future until 2044 when Pluto moves into Pisces. So Saturn, what Saturn's doing right now and for the next million years is going to be very important because Pluto is getting instructions from Saturn. That's how we can think of that. Anyway, with all that as a background, and I hope that wasn't too much of a mishmash information dump, let's look back at the actual new moon. So the sun and the moon are at 0 degrees, 22 minutes of Virgo. the very freshest Virgo, and they are in conjunct to Neptune and Saturn on one side and Pluto on the other. Actually, it should be Pluto, Neptune, Saturn. Besides that, Uranus is in Gemini, and he's squaring the moon, the new moon, the sun and the moon. And these are all really tight orbs. So that means it's more of a direct impact. Then there's two flavors of inconjunct. There's 150 degrees and 210 degree aspects. The 210 degree inconjunct between Pluto and the new moon is already a Plutonian Scorpio kind of aspect already. It's about the drive to complete the original purpose. There's a feeling of like needing to fulfill a promise. But the plan, in order for this to fulfill that promise, whatever we're trying to get done needs to take into account the needs of the whole society, or else it's going to be blocked. Isn't that good news? That's the way this aspect works. It sounds really hopeful, right? Pluto rules Scorpio. He's symbolic of the soul itself in a natal chart. He's about endings and new beginnings, about death and rebirth, and about the power of our eternal soul. So our sun, our vitality, and our moon, the feeling path that we walk, are being pressured to strategize and plan and to evolve in line with what's good for the whole of society. We've got to fully get behind all of what Pluto in Aquarius wants to accomplish. At the same time, the sun and moon are being challenged by the 150 degree inconjunct aspect. Flavor of that one is much more difficult. It feels really insecure and unsure. In the natal chart, it symbolizes deep inner criticism, something that Virgo and Saturn know all about, right? They're really good at that deep inner criticism. And they're so good at it that they can spread that criticism around to their whole environment. I'm sure we have encountered somebody like that there's something wrong with everything. And that's, a helpful way to be if we can use that information constructively, instead of thinking that we're powerless to change anything. It's super important for us right now to stay out of self-loathing criticism or the separating idea that, oh, it's all your fault, because both of those things take our power away. You follow me on that, how that works? Blame takes us out of the action, and instead of blaming people, we need to start asking why. Why and how did we get here? Why do I feel like we're not going to make it? Why do I feel like I'm not ready? And if we look closely at that bottom of the why, we might find a big pile of excuses. We're going to have to really work. We're going to have to push ourselves into feeling comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. We have to see our reasons as the excuses that they are, because we can justify anything to ourselves if we want it badly enough. Like, think about that. If we want something badly enough, we can just reframe it in a way that makes it okay or acceptable, right? That's how many, many people are justifying their political views right now. Well, it doesn't hurt me, so I don't care, right? That's an excuse to not be a human being. I'm sure there's many little examples in your personal life, like in your relationships, where you've put all of the blame for something that's going wrong on another person when it would be more constructive to say, well, this is what I can do now. And that feels really, really uncomfortable. And that's our job right now, is to feel uncomfortable so we can get out of this rut. So many of us, and this is what this channel is all about, people that have experienced some kind of significant trauma. And that's more people than you think. But that significant trauma can leave us in a place where the idea of enduring more pain and doing anything but just avoiding pain makes us feel like we're going to collapse. And that's a really real feeling. But look at where we are now. We're adults, and we can have the last word unless we've given our autonomy away. And if we have, well, this is your transit. Now is your time to reclaim that power. The pain and difficulty that we have to face on the path of growth are fundamentally different to the kind of unrelenting, unfair, abusive parent or the never-ending sad ache of neglect. We can make changes for ourselves, and we can grow on our own schedule. We can step away from facing up to the difficulty and the discomfort and take a break and recharge and then come back. And that, really the fact is we can't grow until we are comfortable with feeling a little uncomfortable. And that doesn't mean I'm uncomfortable because I'm tolerating abuse. No, I'm talking about the discomfort with calling things what they are. And that's where Saturn comes in. I'm a Capricorn sun, so Saturn is, I've made friends with Saturn. Saturn practically enjoys hard work and difficulty because Saturn knows at the end of the struggle there's going to be reward. And it's not going to be like, oh, here's an ice cream. No, it's not like this superficial reward. It's the kind of reward that we can take with us into our next lifetime. Changes to our soul, that kind of reward. And every time we grow, life just gets easier. It really does. It's not healthy or even smart to be constantly anticipating a new disaster or only imagining the worst outcome. That is a trauma response. That is the response of not being able to stop the abuse when we were younger. That's our brains taught us to think this way as to save us from getting in worse trouble. And that was a tactic that worked really well when we were young, but that's not where we are anymore. We need to let that go. We can't, and until you let that go, we're still letting the abuser run the show in our life. See what I mean? We can call the shots. We must call the shots. So anyway, that's the 150-degree inconjunct aspect at work. Making excuses because of our deep insecurity. So Saturn's really a bridge here, bringing us from one way of being to the next, teaching us how to use structure and limitation and hard work, not with suffering, like not every time we have to do something difficult where we don't have to suffer. That is a frame of mind, and that frame of mind is so important right now. We can do all those things with a heart full of joy instead. Good cop. See? So Neptune, on the other hand, that is also in this inconjunct aspect right there with Saturn. Neptune is practically the opposite of Saturn. So it's really wild that these two have been hanging out together since April of 2025. And it's interesting to note that when they came really close to conjuncting, but they didn't. And in between them was the North Node, which is the future and what we desire, and Mercury, our beliefs, how we think, how we organize our thoughts. Those two were in between Saturn and Neptune coming together. So that's a big message. We need to change our way of thinking about things before we can move into the future. These two are going to be together until after they actually fully conjoin in February of 2026. And then they're going to move out of orb for good on March 3rd, 2026. See? Like everything's going to change between now and the spring. It's going to be a weird winter, but everything's going to be different in the spring. So Neptune is slippery and sublime, and where Saturn is like cold, hard, very reliable facts. Neptune can fill us with wonder and belonging and a feeling of like being one with the beauty and power of the world. She can also be like smoking cannabis all day. We're in such a nice warm fog, it makes everything seem, even the absolutely unacceptable things can seem like, it's no big deal, it's bearable. Boundaries can become invisible under the influence of Neptune. We can feel more like back in the primordial soup of development than evolved autonomous human beings with opposable thumbs and big brains. Neptune makes it really easy for us to throw off personal responsibility. We want someone else to tell us right from wrong sometimes with Neptune, to tell us how to judge our moment-to-moment existence. Like, then when things go badly for us, we don't have to take responsibility. We can blame somebody else, and we can even blame God. Many of our fellow citizens now, I feel, identify more with what their tribe tells them to think and feel than what their own lived experience is telling them about what to think and feel. And it's the Neptunian spell. Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, and we are leaving the age of Pisces. Thank God. We're going from everyone believing in the same controlling shame and never-ending punishment of like these Abrahamic religions and opening our eyes to objective reality and natural law as we move into the age of Aquarius. Neptune gives us hope and inspiration. She's intuition. She's the feeling of being like in the zone of creativity. So we've got these two in a healthy interpretation urging us to act and to put in the work to connect with the whole, not these contrived differences that keep us at each other's throat. Like, that is a tactic that's being used against us. Our life force and our feelings are unified, but somehow we still feel like this deeply unsure, like we're still not ready. We're a deer in the headlights. We don't want to take action. But the challenge here is to accept the discomfort of doing what we know is right, even when it's new and scary. The new moon is at, like I said, that early degree of Virgo, and Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So our beliefs, our mental processing, how we organize our thoughts, and how we strategize. And we've got a beautiful mutual reception between a very loud, unaspected Mercury, and the Sun. So, on the one hand, our thoughts and opinions are going to be very loud, and we're going to hear a lot of braying and whining from people who are only thinking about themselves. We can't let them stop us. We cannot let them stop us because they're being loud. We have to laugh at them. Like, I think Gavin Newsom is doing such a great job at showing how effective just laughing at them is. And besides all of that, we've got Uranus, ruler of revolution and socialism, squaring this new moon. And he is in also a Mercury house, too, Gemini. It's a first quarter square between Uranus and the new moon. So it's also full of fear. What do I do? Like, what do I do? And this is an excellent opportunity for people to actually see the light. So how can we support that for other people? And how can we see the light in our personal lives too? What area of your life do you need to kind of have a different take on? Let go of the hot take and think about things in a more strategic way. How can we overturn the power of oppression in all that's going on now in the world and in our personal lives too? That's the question for this new moon. But I'll tell you what we can do. We can examine and challenge our beliefs, especially when our beliefs are self-defeating. We can believe in ourselves, in our rights, in our desires, and we can try new things. We can absolutely change the outcome just by changing our attitude and our actions. But it starts with our attitude. And in fact, it's mandatory that we change. We won't get what we want, our country, our relationship, our work, our whatever it is that's front of mind right now, if we don't think that what we want is actually possible. And I've been guilty of this in my life over and over again. There's something I want, but I don't really think it's possible for me to have it. So it never does. Because I don't believe it. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I've been struck by this term that Heather Cox Richardson explained recently called flooding the zone. It's a political tactic that's being used against us right now where like so much shit is being pushed through the pipes that we are meant to feel completely overwhelmed and like we can't do anything about it. We're meant to feel powerless. It's so Neptunian, even the name, flooding the zone, right? Water and Neptune. We need to adopt this tactic too. We need to flood the zone with our beliefs about what it is to be American, about what America is all about, because our beliefs shape everything. I can't stress that enough, and I hope I've not stressed it too much. Our beliefs shape everything, though, and that is the medicine reflected in this new moon chart. We can change the world, even though it feels scary and weird and uncomfortable. We can change the world. So, if you're spinning out, not knowing what to do in your personal life, I am happy to meet with you to discuss how all of this is landing in your chart, what it's kicking off in your chart, and to help you see clearly through this washing machine of change that's happening right now. Help you see the path of growth that's in front of you and like, what are your life desires? What is your life work? What did you come here to do? I can help you with that. head on over to my website, michellecraft.love, schedule a reading with me, and you'll feel better. I promise. But until next time, remember that I love you. But the universe loves you so much more.